Okay, we're live. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a beautiful September 2021. This is today is September 1st, on Wednesday, which is our Standard Planning, Economic Development, and Housing Committee. We are broadcasting live at Hartford Public Access Television Station. You can watch the live broadcast and channel Comcast channel 96 and Frontier channel 6032. It is also streaming live on HPA-TV.org and HPA-TV Facebook. And also, if you missed the council meeting, you can always go back and watch the council committee meeting on HPA-TV YouTube channel. So this is a great opportunity for the community and the residents of Hartford to actually stay in touch with their council committee. Good evening, everyone. We have joining us for the committee meeting is Councilman John Gale, who's a committee member, Councilwoman Marilyn Rossetti, who is a council member. I believe that's it we have for right now. So we have two items on the agenda, and we also will have two presentations, one from iQuilt and one from Department of Development Services, the Housing Department. And I believe we have our Housing Director, Mr. Brian Matthews, on the line, which is good, and he'll do his presentation. And we also have Ms. Jackie Mandyke from the iQuilt program is going to do a presentation for us. So good evening and welcome, everyone. And so let's talk about the two items that we have to address in our committee meeting. The first item, everyone was sent an agenda, is an accompanying resolution from Mayor Bronin that would authorize the city to accept a $200,000 grant from the State Department of Economic Development, DECD, Office of Brownfield Remediation and Development, to initiate a comprehensive environmental assessment of Bergdorf/McCook campus at 80 Coventry Street. The item was on the agenda at our July 12, 2021 council meeting, and the item was sent to our Planning, Economic Development, and Housing Committee. Do we have anyone from the city to address this item? Well, seeing that we don't, just from reading the resolution, basically, you know, we have some really old properties in the city of Hartford that needs a lot of remediation. And I think this $200,000 pursuant to the resolution is basically, is an initiative, it's the first initiative to actually start a comprehensive comprehensive environmental assessment. Basically, it's the state of Connecticut working with the city of Hartford to start looking at all our properties and actually having taken a look of when and how much it's going to cost to remediate these properties. So seeing that we don't have anyone from Development Services who can talk to us about the issue, do I have a recommendation? Hello?
Councilman Surgeon, it's Erin Howard. I'm actually in. Hi, I'm sorry.
Hi, Erin. I am so sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm actually borrowing Dave Stuber's computer, so I apologize.
I saw this Dave Stuber, and I'm like, I don't know who that is. Okay. Well, Erin, welcome, and thank you very much for joining us. You want to tell us a little bit about this resolution from the mayor?
Oh, yes. So really quickly, we just had an opportunity with DECD to put in a brownfield assessment grant for 80 Covington Street, and it's the entire campus. We have enough documentation that there's some environmental questions and concerns that were related to that entire property. And so because we didn't have a full breadth of understanding, we went after a overall brownfield assessment grant to look at that entire site. And so the goal would be to receive these funds, kick off a brownfield assessment program there, and from there start talking about potential redevelopment of that property. As you know, that property, that whole campus was identified as one of Hartford's 10 transformative project areas. So this is part of our due diligence step within the planning process in order to move forward towards a future development of that site.
Okay, great. So basically we have no clue what the estimated total costs would be for remediate the entire project or the entire areas yet.
Correct, not at this time, but the goal would be to do enough investigations to get a better magnitude of cost.
And do we have a timeline, Erin, when we're planning on starting to do this?
We're in the process. Once this gets accepted, we can go ahead and execute contracts with the state. We'll put out an RFP for a consultant over the next few months and hopefully kick off some environmental assessments probably in the late winter, early spring of 2022.
Okay, great. Any questions from any of the committee members or anyone joining us?
Yes.
Erin,
Chair, if I may.
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Erin, I'm just wanting to make sure I'm understanding the property we're talking about. It describes it as 80 Coventry, and you're saying it's the whole campus. So walk us through what buildings are included. There's a lot of stuff from Vine Street all the way over to Tower Avenue. And how much or how little of that is all being included in this? So,
and I apologize because I don't have a map in front of me, but if you go on to the GIS map that the city has, 80 Common Street actually goes and encompasses like 12 buildings. It goes all the way north. It's where intercommunity and the senior facility, all that in that area, that is part of that entire campus. It's not just McCook Hospital. It's that entire area. So there's multiple buildings. We've demoed buildings over time. There's an old stack of, in the area right behind the hospital that we're going to be looking at for soil contamination and such.
So I don't know if I can, Chair, I'm going to try to share my screen. Is that acceptable?
Oh, sure. If the committee can see an idea of where they are looking, what we're talking about, absolutely. Go ahead, sir.
Let's see if that works.
Do you find it?
Does everybody see that?
Yes, yes, we can.
Erin, so can you, looking at that picture, I see 80 Coventry Street, marked at the top of but you're telling me it's really everything all the way down to Vine Street, including what's marked there as the Blue Hills Treatment Center, which I'll call the old McCook Hospital.
So I believe that actually that Blue Hills Treatment Center is not part of this, but it is from Vine Street all the way north up towards the North End Senior Center.
Okay, so it's that whole large parcel. We can see there are multiple buildings on that.
Yes.
And do we have reason to believe that there are environmental issues with these properties?
Yes, we've done some over time, and we have, like, even from McCook Hospital, we have a couple of reports. If you recall, we've actually used that building over time as a city. And so our DPW we've had things and activity going on this entire campus. And so over time, we have reports from 1 or 2 locations. We have some preliminary environmentals, hazardous materials, mostly internally within the buildings. So we're talking lead, asbestos, all of that needs to be abated. Because of the age of the buildings, there could be, things like PCBs and things that we're not 100% sure of, but it's likely on the property. And so we have enough to date to know it's going to be a decent amount of environmental cleanup. But because it's scattered information, our goal is to really try to understand what we have today, fill in the gaps so that we really have a true understanding of the overall needs for the entire campus, and then come up with a plan on how to address it going forward.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions or comments from the committee members? Hearing none, the chair would love to hear a motion on the floor.
Sure, I'll move that we send this back to council with a favorable recommendation.
I'll second it.
The motion has been properly made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion. Those in favor? Those against? Those abstaining? Hearing no abstention. Okay, so the motion is approved to be for the resolution to be sent back favorable to our next council meeting, which I believe which will be September 13th.
Great, thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Erin, for joining us.
My pleasure.
And tell David hello for us.
Will do. Thank you.
Okay, our second item on the agenda. Again, it's a resolution from Mayor Bronin authorizing the city of Hartford to enter into a 15-year tax abatement agreement with Omni American LLC to support the portfolio of 150 units of affordable rental housing dispersed over 32 parcels located in the Clay Arsenal neighborhood of the city of Hartford, known as Clay Arsenal Renaissance Apartment. This item was on the item 3 on our August 9th council agenda. The item was sent to both PD&H committee and also to the OMB committee. The item was taken up in the Management and Budget Committee on August 16th, and it passed favorably to be sent back to the council favorably. Several, I believe, of our committee members here had joined the OMB committee, which also had all our questions answered, with some changes that were supposed to be instituted in a new resolution to be sent to the, or a substitute resolution to be sent to the council. Not sure if anyone here from the Development Service Department would like to discuss and inform us again about this item that we talked about at our August 16th Management and Budget Committee.
Good evening, Madam Chair. This is Tone Nelson with the Department of Development Services Division of Housing. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, Mr. Tone. Go right ahead, sir.
Okay. Well, thank you. I am here to speak on behalf of the resolution, the original and the substitute resolution, as authorized by the Joint Committee during the August 16th OMB PEDH Committee joint session. If you'd like, what I'd like to do, Madam Chair, is read the original resolution and then refer to the substitute resolution and point out the differences or the changes that were made, the amendments that were suggested and authorized by the committee.
Yes, Mr. Nelson, please go ahead, sir.
Okay. The original agreement, as you stated, says that the city would enter into a 15-year abatement with the Omni Group for the Clay Arsenal apartments, or 150 units of affordable housing dispersed amongst the 32 parcels in the Clay Arsenal neighborhood. Whereas the intent to continue to Omni's intent to continue to operate the property as affordable housing for low-income persons and families, and it has applied for a new tax abatement, which documents the need for relief, and where the Tax Abatement Committee has recommended such agreement. And now therefore be it resolved, the mayor is authorized to enter into a tax abatement agreement with Omni for the properties subject to the following terms and conditions. The term of the agreement shall not exceed 15 years. The agreement shall be effective the earlier of July 1st of Omni's second full year of ownership, or the first year of the low-income housing tax credit compliance period through June 30th of the 15th year of the initial effective date. The agreement shall require Omni to pay the taxes, pay as follows. Year 1 and 2, the owners to pay $1,000 per unit, and then $1,500 per unit I'm sorry, $1,400 per unit, years 3 through 5, and then years 6 through 10, $1,500 per unit, years 11, $1,800 per unit, years 12 through 13, $2,000 per unit, and year 14 through 15, the owner shall pay $2,300 per unit. Omni shall pay the fully assessed tax for the years prior to the effective date of the tax abatement agreement. And any net operating income that exceeds debt coverage ratio of 1.2 for any given period of time as revealed by the audit, Omni shall make additional tax payments equal to the net amount of net operating income that exceeds the 1.2 debt coverage ratio. The sum of the payment in lieu of pilot and additional payment, if any, for any particular year shall be capped at the fully assessed real property taxes due for said year. Omni shall expend no less than $10 million toward capital improvements and or repairs, which shall include but not be limited to make ready repairs and improvements to the units not currently occupied and the construction of the new community center. Repairs and improvements to the said units must be completed within 24 months of the execution date of the agreement. The construction of the community building shall begin within 3 years of the execution date of the agreement and completed within a reasonable construction schedule consummate with industry standards for like structures in New England. During the construction, capital repairs and or improvements, Omni will comply with the Article 12, Section 2-68 of the Hartford Municipal Code, Hartford Affirmative Action Plan, Equal Opportunity, which requires the developer to set aside 15% of the total construction costs for certified minority and women businesses. Enterprises assure that no less than 15% of the total project work hours by trade be performed by minority and or women trade workers, and no less than 30% of the total project work hours shall be performed by Hartford residents. Omni shall comply with all federal, state, and local laws, codes governing the conditions and operations of the property. During the term of the abatement, all 150 units are to remain affordable as prescribed by the HUD use agreement and or applicable regulations of the low-income housing tax credit program. Notwithstanding anything to the contrary, this agreement, the city agrees that this agreement shall automatically transfer in order to the benefit of any party succeeding in the interest of Omni under the agreement or as a result of foreclosure. Upon any future sale or refinancing during the term of the abatement, the payment shall be made to the city in 10% of the net sales proceeds or equity recapture, not to exceed the total of abated taxes. Any funds raised by Omni to meet the city's requirements to complete improvements and or capital repairs shall be exempt from the 10% recapture clause. The agreement shall be held in escrow by the city until the property is transferred to Omni and the use agreement is assumed. If Omni fails to execute the tax abatement agreement forwarded to it by the city, as for the final version of the document for execution within 90 days of its receipt, the proposed agreement shall be immediately and automatically withdrawn and no longer available. Omni shall comply with all federal, state, and local codes. This is a repeat. The tax abatement agreement shall not be non-assignable, non-transferable without written consent by the Committee on the Abatement of Taxes and Assessments, the Court of Common Council, and signed by the Mayor of the City of Hartford. Resolve: the Mayor is authorized to execute and all manner of the documents and to take such other actions as he and Corporation Council may deem appropriate and in the best interest of the city in order to effectuate the above transaction, and be it further resolved that no person or entity shall benefit or rely on or otherwise claim any benefit by reason of this resolution should the mayor fail to execute the aforementioned agreement or other documents or to take any of the aforesaid action, and be further resolved that all approvals and authorizations provided hereby are contingent upon and only shall be effective on and by means of parties executing such document and taking such actions, all of which shall be in the form and substance acceptable to the mayor and corporation council. And then the last page is just an exhibit that listed the parcels involved. As
Um,
proposed, I'm sorry,
Mr. Nelson, so basically, can you just summarize the changes that
sure.
is going to be in the substitute resolution?
The changes that are in the substitute resolution, what was recommended as amendments to the agreement on the 16th involve two things. One is that the property be able to, that Omni be able to assign the property, the tax abatement agreement to an assignee of Omni, being that it's a tax credit property. Generally, what happens is the Omni will form a limited partnership, and as a result of the tax credits, and the limited partnership will own the property with the developer or Omni being a small percentage of the ownership. And the second is the effective date of the agreement, or relates to the effective date of the agreement. And in the substitute resolution is number 2. The agreement shall be effective upon the transfer of title to Omni and the assumption of the use agreement, with the payment in lieu of taxes, as mentioned in the commencement of July 1st of Omni's second full year of ownership, as it correlates. This is one of the changes, as it correlates to the city's fiscal year, or the beginning of the first year of the low income housing tax credit compliance period, through June 30th of the 14th year after the initial payment. It goes on to say, if the low income house tax credit compliance period begins on or after August 1st of the fiscal year during Omni's first full year of ownership, the pilot under the agreement shall begin July 1st of the following fiscal year, unless otherwise approved by the Department of Development Services. So those are the two changes, Madam Chair, where we wanted to eliminate any ambiguity as it relates to when the pilot is to begin, and 2, provide Omni the opportunity to assign the agreement to its assignee once it purchases the property and forms an entity to own the building, without the resolution having to go before council for to transfer the agreement, to assign and assume the agreement.
So I remember at the August 16th OMB meeting. So basically, by doing the Omni assignee, there's part of the resolution that if they did sell the property, there will be some reimbursement to the city. So they're not actually selling the property, or once they assign it over to the partnership. Is that correct?
That's correct, Madam Chair, because Omni is the assignee will be related to Omni. And if you don't mind, Madam Chair, through you, I'd like to introduce the 2 Omni representatives who may be on the meeting, so that they can further expound on the significance of having this clause in the agreement. First, there's Paulina. I'm sorry.
Are they here? I'm not sure who are.
Yes, it's Paulina, and I will defer pronouncing your last name, Paulina, because I don't want to mispronounce it so badly that folks laugh at me. So, and Paulina is the Vice President of Development, and we also have a community representative, Janice Fleming.
Okay, thank you, sir. Miss Paulina, so I'm not going to I don't want to mispronounce your name also.
No
if you
problem.
can, share with us how the assignment will not affect a sale.
Sure. Thank you, Chair. And good evening, everyone. Like Tom said, my name is Paulina Bakhtiar. I'm a Vice President of Development here at Omni America. So the assignment is necessary because in this low-income housing tax credit structure, as Mr. Nelson mentioned, we need to form a limited partnership in order to effectuate the transaction and be able to receive financing from the state. So we have formed a limited partnership that will actually be the entity that purchases the property from the current owner, as well as the entity that receives the loan and the financing from the Connecticut Housing Finance Authority.
Okay. And so also the other change in the pilot program would not begin until July 2022.
Correct.
And so basically you're aligning it with our fiscal year.
Correct. Yes. So we budgeted in our pro forma to pay for that initial year because we are looking to acquire the property before the end of this year. So we will have a proration for which we will pay through June 30th of 2022, and then July 1st, 2022, the pilot will kick in.
Gotcha.
I'm sorry, if I may,
Sure.
the way the agreement is currently written is the pilot will not become effective until one, the second full year of ownership, or two, the compliance period of the low-income housing tax credits, the beginning of the compliance period of low-income housing tax credits, or the in-service date.
Okay, so Mr. Nelson, I'm a little naive on this, so explain that to me in layman's term again.
Okay, so what will happen under tax credits? The developer or the borrower is responsible for meeting certain requirements. And once those requirements are met, then the tax credits are placed in service. At that point in time, they are obligated to meet certain thresholds every year. One is, which is the debt service coverage ratio, in addition to making sure that the units are occupied by eligible individuals. In this case, it's my understanding that the tax credits are not going to be used for acquisition, but the tax credits are going to be used for construction. And Paulina, please correct me if I'm wrong, but that's my understanding. In which case, if that's the case, we assume construction will take at least 12 months, or of the rehab and improvements will take at least 12 months, at which point in time, I suspect that the tax credits will be in place for all the units. Or the other way this thing, the abatement becomes effective is after the first year of full ownership, which runs correlates with the city's fiscal year. So if they were to purchase the property, like I said, in let's see, in October, unless the tax credits are in place, in service, and the compliance period has began, the abatement will not kick in until July 2023.
Ah, okay, 2023. Okay.
So just to underscore, kind of summarize what Mr. Nelson said. So the construction will finish next year. The property will be placed in service in 2022, and we will be claiming the credits in 2022. Hence, the compliance period will begin in 2022. So everything will happen in 2022. The pilot will start on July 1st in order to correlate with your fiscal year.
Yes, that's most likely the case, Madam Chair. However, I just wanted to point out that there are caveats in this agreement that if the tax credits aren't placed in service, so just that it's easier for us to track when the abatement started and when the abatement ends. That language was added just to, as I said, clear up some of the obscurity and ambiguity on the city's behalf.
Okay. Now, okay, I'm getting it now where, I'm getting it now. Okay. All right. Thank you so very much, Mr. Nelson, and thank you. All right, Paulina, any questions from our committee members or anyone joining us? Councilman Gale, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Mr. Nelson, let me see if I'm understanding this. The tax abatement is going to be effective on either July 1 of 2022 or July 1 of 2023. Do I have that right?
That's correct, Councilman.
Okay. And so in order for it to occur earlier, Omni here has to do something to get these tax credits and whatnot. And it sounds like they're going to work pretty diligently because they want to get this abatement earlier rather than later.
That's correct. So what has to happen is the tax credits will be awarded, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the property or the compliance period will begin or the tax credits will be placed in service. But there are obligations and things they'll have to do in order for the tax credits to be placed in service, and one is complete construction.
So I see where it says that that if the earlier date is determined by the obtaining the
tax credits and service.
The tax credits, it then goes through the fifth. Does it go through the 15th year, or is the amendment it goes through the 14th year, or how does that work?
It will go through the 14th year after the initial payment. So it is a 15-year agreement.
Okay, so what happens if the start date is July 1, 2023? How long does it go at that point?
It's 15 years.
It's still 15 years
Yes.
from that point on. Okay, thank you. The other question I have is, I think, for Paulina, and that is, you indicated that Omni is going to be transferring title to a limited partnership. I think our concern was in making sure that, we understand that a lot of entities will create a subsidiary, a wholly owned subsidiary for the purposes of running an individual project. Are we to understand that this limited partnership is indeed a wholly owned subsidiary of Omni?
Correct. And to be clear, Omni America, Omni Holding Company is not going to factor in any of this. The property will be purchased by the limited partnership, and that limited partnership will receive the financing from the state. But yes, to answer your question, council member, it will be wholly owned by Omni America LLC.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Any other questions? I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr. Nelson.
if I may, Councilman,
Yes.
under the tax credit laws, the developer or an initial investor is only allowed to own a certain percentage of the property. So 99% of the property will be owned by the limited, will be owned of the LLC, will be owned by the limited partnership. And Omni will own 1% of the limited partnership. So they're still, the two are related. So it's not as if the property is being transferred from Omni to another group with that Omni is not involved in. As Paulina explained, Omni will, the assignee will be related to Omni by way of creating a limited partnership, in which case Omni will be the general partner.
Any questions?
Well, now I just got more confused.
So here I can actually share my.
I was ahead.
I can show you the org chart if that would be helpful.
Sure.
Yes, that'd be helpful. Yes, please.
Share my screen. Okay, great.
Please go right ahead.
Here we go. Can you see my screen?
Oh, yes.
Okay. So at the top of the org chart, you have the limited partnership, right? And then as Mr. Nelson mentioned, there's a general partner, which is going to be called Clay Arsenal Apartment Developers, which, as you see, flows into Omni America. And then there will be a limited partner, which owns 99.99% of the project. This will be the investor entity. So this is literally what Mr. Nelson just said, but just in visual form. So Omni America, to answer Councilmember Gale's question, Omni America is the only development entity that's in the structure. But to Tone's point, we're just the general partner. So we own 0.01% of the project, and then the investor owns the balance.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. So there are, and I take it this was always understood, there are a bunch of investors throughout the country who are buying into this limited partnership, but the control of the entire project, they're putting their money in, they're looking to get some sort of return, but the control is going to be with Omni at all times.
Correct. As the general partner, we will control the actual project. The investors are just providing the equity in order to effectuate the loan capacity tax credit transaction.
And if I may, Madam Chair, just one more question for Mr. Nelson. Just to confirm then, Mr. Nelson, this has always been the city's understanding that Omni would have, that whoever was buying this included a whole bunch of investors, but it was always going to be operated by and as the general partner Omni.
Under the tax credit guidelines, yes, that's the understanding. The assignee was, or the request to have it assigned to the assignee was brought up after the initial resolution was forwarded to council.
Hey, Paulina, you can stop sharing your screen. Just one question. I'm trying to look and see, do we have anyone from Corporation Council joining us?
I think Attorney Vassallo is here now, but I don't believe he was here earlier.
I'm
I
sorry.
see his name.
I gotta go to my participants and take a look.
And when you're done,
Yep.
Chair, I have a question.
Yeah, Attorney,
Vassallo.
where
Yes.
did he go?
Yes. I'm here.
Oh, okay,
Were
great.
you? I don't think he was here. That's all
I was not here for the presentation as I was trying to get home from the office before the heavy rain.
Okay.
And so I did miss the initial presentation. I just logged on literally about 2 minutes ago.
That's okay. We understand. I'm glad you're home safely. There was just a little bit of apprehension regarding the ownership.
Mhm.
I think Miss Paulina kind of straightened out with her visual artwork here. And I just wanted to make sure that Corporation Counsel has reviewed all the council are going to be the substitute resolution to make sure it's legally okay.
We did review the substitute resolution and use that in drafting the agreement. And we believe the language was, in fact, it was reviewed by myself, and I believe Jim Del Visco also weighed in as to his opinion. So we both believed it was sufficient.
Okay, great. Thank you, Attorney Velasquez. I'm glad you make it home. Councilman Rossetti, go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question for, may I call you Paulina? For Ms. Paulina. Your investors, just out of curiosity, are these investors that normally invest with you, or are each project do you have people that come in, or are these people that have worked with you in the past?
Yes, so we are actually a vertically integrated real estate organization, and one of our companies is called CREA. They are a tax credit syndicator. So we work with them in order to attract these investors. We work with them for quite some time, and of course, they're part of our larger organization. So yes, they're very familiar with these projects. They're familiar with LIHTC compliance. And so they're well versed in the regulations, and we have a great working relationship with the syndicator for this deal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, sorry to interrupt. This is David Fleming from Omni. Apologies. I'm in the middle of commuting home in the rain, but was able to join and heard some of the discussion on this. Just on the investor point, so the investors and the credits, CREA is the syndicator, but the investors are traditionally large financial institutions. So this will be a large financial institution will be the investor who's going to purchase the credits and provide the equity funding.
Thank you for joining us, David. I'm glad you made it home safely also, as Attorney Velasco did. I remember at the Management and Budget Committee meeting, there was a gentleman who was also part of the investment group that is also a resident of the state of Connecticut. I remember him joining us at the OMB committee meeting, and he certainly vouched to make sure these these buildings are maintained and, making sure that the residents do have respectable housing to live in. Any other questions or any other comments? Mr. Nelson, are you good?
No, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Great. And the chair will entertain a motion.
I'll move to send this back to council with a favorable recommendation.
Second.
Great. The motion has been made and properly second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
All right, great.
Aye.
Thank you. Those are against? Anyone abstaining? Okay, so the motion has been approved to be sent back to the council meeting as a favorable recommendation for approval. Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Thank you, Ms. Paulina. Thank you, David, for joining us by phone. We appreciate your contribution, to the committee meeting.
So much.
Thank you, Madam
Have a
Chair.
great evening, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, members of the committee.
One more question, Mr. Tom, before you leave. So the substitute resolution, would it be sent to us or is it going to be sent to our town clerk's office?
It was sent to the town, it was sent to the mayor's office, Madam Chair, and it should be submitted. I thought you would have a copy of it, but it was sent to the mayor's office.
Okay, so we need to get a copy of the substitute resolution.
Yes, if you'd
Because
like.
Attorney Velasco, I've got a really good question for you. What we just approved, is it the substitute resolution or is it the resolution that's on our agenda item as is? Hello?
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. My question is,
I was still on
item-
mute.
Go ahead, sir.
I was going to say, I did not see your posted agenda before the meeting had started, so I'm not sure what language is actually on the agenda.
The posted item that was on the agenda is the item that was originally on the August 9th council agenda.
And through you, Madam Chair, to Tone Nelson, if he recalls the date of the substitute resolution?
The substitute resolution is dated for September 13th to be presented to council for the 13th meeting, September 13th meeting. It was forwarded to the mayor's office on the 25th of August.
Well, so that was not in existence before your agenda. You got, yeah.
Our agenda was posted on August 20th.
20th.
Yes.
Yeah, so it sounds like your agenda was posted before the resolution, if I've gotten the dates right from what Mr. Nelson just said. I think he said it was on the 25th that it was forwarded. Is that correct, Tom?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and the committee does not have did not receive the latest resolution. Well, I suppose trying to think if the approval can be conditioned upon receiving the updated resolution receiving the updated resolution, but then you won't be able to act.
Well, one of the things also at the Management and Budget Committee meeting, what we approved was, the same resolution with the recommended changes from the administration of the time change and the assignment change. That's how the resolution was approved at the OMB committee meeting on the 16th. Can we do the same thing?
I would think that would probably be the best thing to do at this point. So yeah, I would say so.
Councilman Gale.
So Madam Chair, my apologies. I think the motion I should have made is to approve the substituted resolution as it was described to us in great detail by Mr. Nelson, and that what we're sending back to council is a favorable approval. I move that we send back to council favorable approval of the resolution as amended. So I would respectfully be happy to change my motion if that satisfies Corp Council, and if the second is satisfied with that, and that should get us back to council with all the right language there.
Councilwoman Rossetti.
Yes,
Okay.
I agree. It makes sense.
Okay. So Mr. Gale, could you now put in the proper, so we're going to rescind what we just approved and amend it.
Sure. I move that we send back to that we send this item as amended by the administration we send it back to council with a favorable recommendation.
And I second that amendment.
Great. The motion has been properly made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none discussion. Vote on this amended resolution. Can I have a vote on this? I hear one aye.
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 Thank you, Council President. Okay. And thank you for joining us, the Council President, and who is a member of the committee. And so we are approving favorably an amended resolution to be sent to council for favorable vote for the overall council. And that is the amended resolution that has been sent to the administration. So the item has been approved and it is favorably been sent to the council for approval. So those are the two items we have on our agenda that we have to properly take up. Now is the fun time. We have two presentations here tonight. We have, let's see, everybody's still here. We have Jackie Mandyke from the iQuilt organization to share with us the vision for the city of Hartford, Hartford 400. Would you believe that in 2035, which is not very far from here, the city will be 400 years old. So I am looking forward to the iQuilt presentation and the vision of what a beautiful city would look like. So Jackie, thank you so very much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I appreciate that.
Great. And if you will gladly share the screen and for you to tell us all about the vision for Hartford 400.
Thank you. Thank you again. And I do want to introduce on the call this evening, I also have my associate Phil Shattuck joining us and Doug Sussman, who's been working with our projects for the last 14 years, working with the iQuilt partnership. So we've also have them on the line if there's any questions or if I miss something, I guarantee that they will jump in and correct me and make sure I give you all the right information. But thank you so much for having me tonight. We wanted to go ahead. I'm the executive director of the iQuilt partnership. I've been in this position for 11, maybe 12 years now. It seems like a much shorter time than that. And about a year and a half ago, we embarked, almost 2 years now, we embarked on looking at the 400th anniversary of Hartford, actually Greater Hartford, and really looking at what potential things can be done and what can we use as the goal of the 400th anniversary for the entire region to come together for some similar visions. Tonight, what I'd like to go ahead and do is present a little bit on the infrastructure part of it and what our proposal is. And where we are right now with that. So if you're okay, I am going to share my screen so everybody can see some pretty pictures.
Oh, great.
Okay, let's see if I can get this working. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yes, we can, ma'am.
Wonderful, wonderful. Just wanted to check. So Hartford 400 is a vision for the entire region, centered, have a river-centered vision for the entire region. And I just wanted to give you a little bit of background with this. One of the things that we always want to make sure we point out is how centrally located Hartford is. We always talk about the economic access between New York and Boston, but I think one of the three other components that we don't talk about as much is really the corridor, the knowledge corridor, and our educational institutions along, and how Hartford's the central location of that. It's really the central location of the river corridor with the Connecticut River. And then it's this beautiful natural access between the mountains and the shore. How fortunate and how lucky we are to live in such a wonderful New England location where we can be in the mountains at the morning and by the evening we can be on the shore. Actually within 3 hours we can be on the shore. So I think it's very important about how we leverage our key locations as we're looking into the future. So I want to begin in 2013 when the state of Connecticut started looking in to replace the viaduct. And again, like I said, in 2013, they began to study to see what they would do with the viaduct, if they would try and put it in a tunnel, if they would put it to grade. Many of you have been involved in this project. And as you know, in December of 2019, they closed down the project, saying we really needed to expand it. After the 6 years plus of working on the project, they said, we just can't focus on solely 84, that we really need to broaden that and look at our whole mobility assets in the greater Hartford region and just not focus on the viaduct. So if you look at this plan, this is currently what you have in Greater Hartford as far as your infrastructure piece, specifically your interstate highways, your exit ramps. You can see the amount of land that it takes up in both Hartford and East Hartford right now. So what they started in early 2020, this is the State Department of Transportation. They started the Greater Hartford Mobility Study. And that study didn't just take 84. It took the system around Greater Hartford to say, how can we become more mobile in various aspects of mobility? How can we start to impact and look at this structure? They have been seeking out information from stakeholders, holding meetings. They've met with community members, corporations, and various other stakeholders in the Greater Hartford Mobility Study. When they began this, as you all know too, Congressman Larson had a vision to try and reclaim a lot of the land and get back to the riverfront. And he was talking about a series of tunnels. The iQuilt Partnership, Doug Sussman and the Hartford 400 group, we really started to look and analyze this. We took into account neighborhood group plans. We took into studies done by DOT. We took into what the I-84 original organization or group from DOT had come up with research, and took all of that and took Congressman Larson's plan and really tried to focus on how do we focus a transformative project if we have to replace the viaduct because it has outlived its useful life. How can we really look at a transformative project? And when we looked at this, I want to just mention the things that we were looking at as far as the goals were, how do we get back to the river? Many communities, many cities, many municipalities have seen great strides when they've been able to reclaim the riverfront more. I mean, riverfront's done a wonderful job, but to more of an extent than what has happened here in Hartford. How do we start to reconnect back to the North End that was separated by I-84? How do we increase our mobility options? How do we do a transformative economic development project and just not talk about a transportation project? And then how can we start to reclaim some public lands? So with those goals in mind, Doug leading his team, and like I said, reviewing many plans that have been on shelves and other people's research and everything, came up with, I believe, an incredible solution that accomplishes those goals that would help really transform the Greater Hartford region and impact the biggest part. The impact would be felt in both Hartford and East Hartford. And I'll just go over this very briefly. What this would do is this would put a capped or a tunnel to the North End. It would relocate the intersection. Let me first start off with that. It would relocate the intersection of 91 and 84. You'd have a tunnel going up and meeting 91. You would also have a tunnel on the south end that would go down and it would meet 91 and go over across the river to meet 84. And then you would bring 91. So as you see in the center of your screen right there, you see a capped, that's 91. You would bring it down to grade and you would cap it. And you would have a boulevard on top and people going north-south, east, or north-south, or south-north. You'd go ahead and you would be in basically a capped, similar to what you do under right now with 84, a capped, but you'd have a boulevard on top that would connect you to the river. And as you can see, East Hartford also has a dramatic change, and they reclaim a lot of land over in East Hartford. Basically, what this would do is this would result in about 28 acres of developable land in Hartford and over 100 acres of developable land over in East Hartford in central business districts or right on the river. These are just some, these are photos, or these are, you know, our ideas of how this would go ahead and look. So as I said, underneath this is the cap. Underneath this would be 91. And this would be your boulevard that you'd go ahead and you would access the city of Hartford. And this is another picture. As you can see, you see the Science Center over there on the left-hand side, some development, expansion of Riverfront Park, the Convention Center. So it really starts to transform our city and our region. The reason why we're bringing this up to you today and why we really appreciate the time is we think now is a perfect opportunity with the federal government, with Congressman Larson's support and the infrastructure package that they're looking at in Congress to really try and strengthen what DOT is looking at with the Greater Hartford Mobility Study. But we also think that it's essential that many voices come out and that they voice their concerns to DOT about how they would like this project to move forward. So we're trying to encourage others to speak their voice and make sure that they are out there and expressing their views. And I think one of the things that we just wanted to bring up was, again, as we talked about our goals, this project is so much more than just transportation. This is an economic development project as well, as we have seen all over the country with people who have embarked on this, with not just looking at redoing highways, but looking at them as how can they help prosper our municipalities in which those highways reside. In addition, accessing our riverfront prime location, we've got to get us back to the river. And that is not just a downtown goal. That should be from south to north in how we access that riverfront for our neighborhoods, for our businesses, for economic development purposes. As I mentioned before, Reconnecting North End, whatever solution that's proposed by the Greater Hartford Mobility Study, we feel as though that has to be one of the key concerns about how they'll reconnect to the North End, which was separated in the 50s when we built the viaduct. And then also, and I just want to emphasize this point too, something that Mr. Sussman brought up to me, and I just never even realized it. If we in Hartford want to get over to East Hartford, whether we're visiting Pratt and Whitney, whether or not we're going to a classic Goodwin College, whatever that might be, we have to get on an interstate highway to be able to go to an adjacent municipality, which is a stone's throw away. And so really trying to look at creative, innovative solutions, simple solutions about how we try and reconnect our communities and how we achieve some of those goals are extremely important. So we want to encourage the council to really reach out to DOT, to the Greater Hartford Mobility Study. If they have similar views to us, if we can answer some questions. Congressman Larson is fighting for DOT to get an earmark of $16 million to move the study along at a faster pace. And we just want to make sure that both East Hartford and Hartford voices are heard and heard very loudly. In addition to that, one of the things that we wanted to bring up to you was another concept. While we've been looking at this north-south corridor, we've also been looking east-west, which we think is very important as far as connecting the line. We have called this the Heart Line, and I want to share with you just a little bit of the concept about this. This can be an early implementer project that we think could be very transformative for the city of Hartford and our surrounding municipalities. As many of you may know, other communities have looked at their rail areas, either decommissioned or adjacent to rail corridors, which you have some buffer zones on. And how can you start to look at trails next to rail systems? We have the Griffin line in the city of Hartford that goes from Union Station out into all the way past Town Center in Bloomfield. And if you look at others and how they've been able to utilize these corridors, such as Charlotte, they've been able to basically look at these corridors as not only trails, but also they start to look at these as places of creative placemaking, of playgrounds, of assets, etc. So Charlotte is not the only community that we've seen these on. We have also seen them down in Washington, D.C. And we've also seen them, one of the most successful that you've seen in the country is the Atlanta Beltline. And as you can see, this was a rail line. There has been billions of dollars invested into neighborhoods. And this has really provided not only an alternative for mobility, biking, walking, running, but it's also provided green space and really connectivity. If you look at it with Hartford, what we see is the Heartline would do. And again, if you start it around Union Station, and I'm talking about a first phase, eventually we'd love for this to connect over to East Hartford and up to Manchester and have it almost a 7.1 mile trail. But the first phase would be to connect Hartford and Bloomfield. So if you look at it from Union Station to Bloomfield Center, you would connect almost 12 different neighborhoods. And then if you look at the key destinations that you see along this trail, and this is within like a 5-minute walk to this trail, you see several, I think it's 15 different schools is within a 5-minute walk of this trail, universities, you've got businesses, you've got nonprofit organizations. It really starts to provide a wonderful connectivity to both all the way from Union Station to the center town of Bloomfield Center. And so it really provides a wonderful asset. I just want to give you some of the ideas that Doug has helped us out with some of these renderings so you can understand. So this is right along 218 out in Bloomfield, and this is the Griffin line that comes out there. And if you can look at the before and after pictures, you can really see about what we could start to look at with this type of project. And if you look at this, this is right along Homestead Avenue near the Chrysalis Center. I think everybody, you can see the Chrysalis Center on the right-hand side down at the bottom right there. And so this is the corner of Homestead and Woodland. And if you look at this, you can see how we can transform and really use this as a huge asset for the city. So we wanted to show you some of this. We think this is definitely one of the early implementers that we could get done as far as the Heartline. But more importantly, we would love for the council to look at these as pieces of a much larger economic development, transportation, progress about how we can move the city forward. I'll stop sharing now, but I think I stopped sharing. There we go. So we really appreciate the time. I know, like I said, I know Doug and Phil are on the call if they wanted to add anything, Madam Chair, but we think we're very excited about this, and we would hope that the council would help us call out some of these things and make sure that your voices are heard if you agree with this type of movement to the state DOT, and make sure that we're moving in the right direction.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Sussman. Do you have anything to add before we open up the floor for questions?
Thank you, Councilwoman. No, Jackie did a great job of giving you an overview. I'm happy to answer any questions. I think the key from our perspective, and I know this is the Economic Development Committee, is to emphasize that while we have great confidence that our State Department of Transportation is going to come up with good solutions to deal with some of the regional issues of highway congestion and traffic, we cannot approach the future of the city and using our 400th anniversary as a lever with just transportation solutions. This has to be a comprehensive economic development and social development strategy, of which transportation is a key part. In the past, when we've let transportation planning make all these decisions, we've ended up with the highway system we have. And that's part of the reason we have some of the problems we have. So transportation is key, but this has to be led by the larger vision of what kind of city do we want? How do we achieve greater equity, greater sustainability, greater vibrancy? How do we attract businesses and people to come and live in the region? And it isn't, the answer to that is not, oh, we're going to improve the highway system. That's a piece of it. It's the most expensive piece, the most difficult piece, and a critical piece, but it can't begin and end with that. It really requires a vision of how can everyone live together better in the city, and at that I think the center of it, let me come back to the river. The center of that is reclaiming the river for everyone in every neighborhood of Hartford, every community and town along the river, certainly not just for downtown, not just for one side of the river, but for everyone, because the river arguably is the greatest asset and the greatest economic asset. Cities that are succeeding now economically for their people and socially, in so many cases have recaptured their riverfront, and they drive huge amounts of economic activity and provide jobs and good living and a way of life for everyone in those cities. That's why we think the river is so important. I'll
Thank
leave it
you.
at that.
Thank you very much. Councilwoman Rossetti.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation. First of all, I have to say it warms my heart to hear Griffin line talked about as something that I thought was important years ago, and I know still is. But I'm thinking, because this is what I do as far as neighborhoods and community. And Jackie, I believe you said it's what it does for our neighborhoods. And my question is, particularly when I look at the visual, which is beautiful, and I'm for capturing the river, but it's a downtown visual. It's a clear downtown visual. What does it do for our neighborhoods that are struggling severely around inadequate housing, crime, all the things that we talk about? And certainly this is a commendable project, but how do even the people here tonight, not looking majority on the screen right here, looking like our neighborhoods, how does what I saw tonight, how does it help? What does it do for our neighborhoods? Because quite frankly, I'm not feeling it.
Yeah, Marilyn, I'll let Doug and Phil chime in too after this. You know, we went ahead and we presented to, when Doug was in town last, we went and presented to the North End leaders of the neighborhood revitalization zones in the North End, 4 of them. And I think one of the things that we came away with was, you know, that the access to the river not just be in downtown, that we make sure that amenities and places that they can enjoy, have recreation, bring their kids, is very accessible to them. So how do we start to get that into the North End and into those neighborhoods to access that? And Doug has been working on those types of accessibilities from the North End over into, you know, this type of vision about where you'd go ahead and do that. I think as we improve some of the quality of life aspects in and around where people can access, I think you start to impact some of the very things that you have mentioned are concerns.
Yeah, I'm a little frustrated because I don't have the drawings in front of us. Let me emphasize that the project starts in downtown because that's where the biggest congestion is, at 8491 interchange. And the key to unlocking all of these improvements, not just for downtown, let me emphasize how important it's not for downtown, but it starts there because that's where the biggest problem is, which is the 8491 interchange. The second worst in New England, the 17th worst in the country. ConnDOT said that has to move, and at the Buckley Bridge and 91. Once that moves, that unlocks everything else. And what we've tried to show in the presentation is it unlocks not just improvements for downtown, obviously that's important. It unlocks for the neighborhoods in East Hartford. It unlocks the river for the North End, all the way up to Riverside Park, all the way up to the Windsor Town line. And I don't have the visuals to show it, but we show linkages from west to east, straight to the river. New access, direct street access from the neighborhoods of Northeast directly to Riverside Park, which now you have to drive like a mile around the highway to get there. You'll be able to walk directly there. In the South neighborhoods, you'll be able to walk directly from Colt Park or Pope Park straight to the river without this barrier of the highways. That sense of connection of being in a riverside city should filter through every neighborhood in Hartford, from Northeast all the way down to the South Meadows. And Jackie, I don't know if you have the larger plan that shows that, but I understand.
And thank you, Doug. I certainly.
I'll stop there.
No, I certainly agree with that. That's why I asked the question. But as someone to bring in, Madam Chair, one more comment, and then I'll
go
stop.
right ahead, ma'am.
As someone wants to bring the reality of downtown in the neighborhoods and the neighborhoods north and south and west feeling sometimes not a part of the downtown redevelopment. I think we need to be overly cautious visually. Certainly, yes, we're focusing on downtown because that's where all this is. But how do we present it in a way that, I'm glad to hear you go to, other neighborhoods. It'd be quite a walk from Pope to the riverfront, but, Colt to the riverfront. But we need to really be cognizant if we're thinking about this as something that transforms the city. How do we make sure that we're simultaneously bringing the neighborhoods that are feeling left out besides having this project? That's all I'm trying to say. And I appreciate the time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And Councilwoman Rossetti, if I could just for a second, Madam Chair, I think the biggest piece behind this, Councilwoman, is that we also make that voice known to DOT. That's what we are urging today, is that this voice and these types of things must be brought to DOT, because whether or not you agree with the Hartford 400 idea and concept, I think the biggest thing is there has to be that voice at DOT, because otherwise they will do this without the voices of Hartford being involved. They've gone out and they're doing a good job with trying to ask questions, but I think putting forth some solutions and some ideas is very important for them to consider.
Any other questions? Councilman Gale.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. To that last point, Jackie, what suggestions do you have for us communicating or becoming a part of this, communicating with DOT? Should DOT be coming before a committee just like you are right now? Should we be getting them in here to answer questions and tell us what's on their mind? Should we be passing resolutions saying, whatever you do, this is our concern? What suggestions do you have?
Councilman, I think that's a great question. And I think absolutely, if I could make a recommendation, I would definitely have them in, or have it as a planning group and make sure that you're voicing your concerns to them and give them your priorities. We've stated some that we think are very, back to the river, reconnecting the North End, give them solid concepts and things that you all want to see. But I think the first step is definitely reaching out to them and asking them to give a presentation, whether it be individually to council people or whether it be in a format such as this. If Madam Chair has the time on a future agenda, that it could be done. I think involving as much as possible to get across what your hopes and dreams are in this project is extremely, extremely important.
And you can provide us with contact information for who this Greater Hartford Mobility Study, who we should contact?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, that would certainly be appreciated. Now, as a corollary to that, we also have, as a regional planning agency, the Capital Region Council of Governments, and I'm wondering, what is the interplay between this mobility study and CROG? Are these guys working in tandem? Are they working separately with their own projects? How does all that work as far as you know?
I'm not going to speak for CROG, but I'll speak for what I know. I think that they have spoken with some of the members of CROG. We have actually done a presentation to CROG's board, and they supported the concepts, that we presented as far as the project goes. And, but I think that while they might have been keeping in touch or getting some feedback from CROG, I don't believe that CROG is necessarily at the forefront of the Greater Hartford Mobility Study.
So this has sort of been taken away from CROG, if you will, or because DOT is a higher body, they kind of trump, and they're doing the planning for all of this at this point.
This is an interstate highway project.
Okay.
Could I, if I may, Councilman Gale. So in our work around the country, we see this again and again and again. And the successful cities are those that link transportation and good planning for neighborhoods and communities. And the transportation engineers are very good transportation engineers. They are not qualified to do the planning. And when those things are unlinked, you get a transportation dominant plan. We got to bring those together. If this was being done correctly, in our view, and the state was leading it, that's fine. You'd have the Department of Transportation working with economic development, with community and economic development at the state level, and they would be equal partners in this. So one, we've been encouraging, I'm sorry, it's DECD, yes, Department of Economic and Community Development. So if a state transportation agency has a major role, then the State Department of Economic and Community Development should have an equal and parallel partnership role. That has not happened. It often doesn't, and what that means is that the transportation engineers end up making the big decisions based on cost and traffic and a whole set of technical issues, and the communities get left out because they're told, well, it just has to be this way because this is what the numbers tell us. So we have to get the planners involved. And your question about CROG is a great one, because CROG is a perfect planning agency. It should be DECD and CROG and the communities themselves all at the table together. And our concern is that DOT will consult, but decide everything. That's the pattern. And we have to make sure that we all decide. This has to be a regional effort, and everybody has to be involved to get the right outcome. So that's our concern. DOT has, of course, the reason that the transportation agencies tend to dominate is because the big changes, moving highways, moving bridges and interchange, cost so much money, and so the biggest budget items tend to overwhelm. But that's how communities get hurt, because the smaller stuff, the walking, the biking, the transit, housing, all of those things tend to get pushed aside when transportation is the determining agency. So that's, I think, what Jackie's leading at. We need to all come together and say, look, we all do it together, not just transportation.
Thank you very much, Jackie. Thank you very much, Mr. Sussman.
Sure.
This is very educational. I do have to, only one question I have, because we have one more presentation and the hour is almost upon us. And that is, as you involve the community, is there any community member sitting on your iQuilt board?
Yes.
That affects North Hartford or South Hartford?
Oh, yeah.
Because that's one of the things is, you may meet with community leaders, but, having someone on your board to kind of bring that information back to the community makes a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yes, and we have both a board and also a board of corporators. And on our board, we do have Charmaine Craig has been on our board for some time, and she's a North End resident.
No, she's not. She's a South End resident. We'll take her.
She's
We
not
love
a North
her.
End resident, Jackie.
We love her.
Sorry.
We'll take her.
Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry. Suzanne Hopgood, who lives downtown. And Phil, help me out. I know I'm like blanking at almost 7 o'clock at night. I know we have 2 other City of Hartford residents on the board.
Okay, you can always send that to us. That'd be great.
I'll make sure I get that out.
And if there's an opportunity to actually appoint, especially resident, when I looked at your map, that it's going to affect Clay Arsenal a lot, Upper Albany and the Blue Hills part of the city, would love to make some recommendation to you, regarding residents who are actually attuned and involved in the neighborhood.
Yes,
Madam Chair, may I do one more question now that you've opened that Pandora's box?
And one more question, because
Okay.
one more presentation.
All right.
We have
Okay,
to,
and again, I feel compelled to say this now that I'll blame it on the chair. She's opened the Pandora's box.
Oh, geez.
Certainly community people on the board. And when you have the meetings, if you're having them during the day and people work, people can't come. So if you truly want community input, and Suzanne Hopgood is a friend of mine, Charmaine is a friend of mine, but if you truly want community input, you have to have it at a time where people who have 9 to 5 jobs, even in pandemic, who can attend. So if you're having them during the day, you're excluding a lot of people.
Okay, so that said, Jackie and Mr. Sussman, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
And you know what I would love to ask you to do, Jackie, for us going forward,
Sure.
is share with us the plans that how it affect economic development in each community, not just downtown. So I'd love to invite you back for another committee meeting with just focusing on how economic impact affect the neighborhood and not just downtown, so we can actually get that information out there, because one of the things I take a look at, and that is people go back and look at these committee meetings, and it's actually being watched. So something as great came out of the pandemic, which, believe it or not, that people actually watch the committee meetings from home, and if they can't watch it at the time, they go back and watch it later on, at our HPA-TV television station. So I would love to invite you back if you can let us know when you may have that presentation as it affects economic development in each of the community, and especially when you move 8491 going north, a little bit more how that's going to affect the Clay Arsenal neighborhood.
Surely. And I did, Madam Chair, if I could,
Yes.
I can't believe I did this, but Councilman Gale is also on our board. So my apologies, Councilman Gale.
Whoa, okay. I didn't know that. All right. Councilman Gale, I got to end this. We have 10 minutes and we've got one more presentation.
Madam Chair, I appreciate the time concern, although I don't recall that our committee meetings are limited in time. I don't recall that we have.
No, it's not limited in time, sir, but the chairperson has another committee meeting she has to get to at 7 o'clock. So that's
So the
why
time constraint is the chairs.
I'm using my privilege as the chair to say I would love to end by 7.
I appreciate the chair wanting to do that. This is a very, very important issue. And I want a couple of minutes to say something about it. And if you'll give them to me now, that's fine. If not, I'll save them for another date.
Well, I've invited back Jackie and Doug again for one of our next committee meetings in upcoming months, because I would like to spend a little bit more time, more in depth in this conversation, especially how it's going to affect economic development in the city, because this is the committee that does take a look at that. And I would love to hear more how the committee and how this council can partnership with them to make that happen. So if you don't mind, Councilman, I would like to move on and invite them back, if not for October, but November's committee meeting. And I'll give them the whole time. I won't schedule any other presentation.
Perfect.
That would just be Jackie and Mr. Sussman by themselves. All right. So thank you so very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we have one more presentation, which is going to take me to my next committee. And that is one of the things we talked about after the budget hearing, is that our committee basically works closely with Department of Development Services. And I wanted to start every committee meeting with a presentation from each of Development Services division, so we don't wait until budget time to find out what's going on in Development Services. And so tonight's presentation is going to be the Housing Division of the Department of Development Services. And we have Mr. Brian Matthew is the director. And Mr. Matthew, I do have to apologize for the lateness. And so tell us what's going on in Development Services in your Housing Division.
Okay, well, thank you for the opportunity. We have about 7 minutes. I'll try to squeeze some things in.
That's okay. I'll invite you back to the next committee meeting so we can finish up.
Okay, did everyone get a paper copy of the presentation?
Yes, we did.
Okay. So I'll be really brief. Some of you already know what we do and who we are, so I won't dwell on that. I talked before this committee a couple of months ago. The first slide basically suggests data that helps to inform our decision making as it relates to programs. I think, Marilyn alluded to some of what was going on here in the neighborhoods and how the iQuilt project can kind of help the neighborhoods to that end. If I can go off script, one thing, if I were the counselors, I would insist on transit-oriented development dollars to accompany the transportation dollars. We talk about building back better. This is a perfect opportunity to do that in a wholesome way. The second thing I would do is try to squeeze in some kind of community benefit. As you're talking about reimagining the river, you want to try to see if the neighborhoods can somehow benefit in a direct or ancillary manner. So I don't see why a fund couldn't be established to promote home ownership and rehab in neighborhoods that are close to where the action is. And those are some of the things that you can suggest as, again, we jump on this theme of building back better. But I'll go to the next slide. Again,
You want to share your screen with us?
Yeah, let me see if I can
sure
do that. I thought someone
Dale loves to share the screen. Come on, Councilman.
I can certainly do so, Mr. Matthews.
I can share it for him if you want.
Can you? That'd be great.
Yes,
thank you. Let's see.
Notice I didn't share the screen.
Yeah. I'm in the same boat.
Oh, that's not it.
Oh no.
No, that's it. That's it.
Yeah. So those are some of the data points that we all know. If you live in Hartford, worked in Hartford, if Hartford is near and dear to your heart, we know that we have quite a few affordable units as it relates to the rest of the state. Doesn't mean we don't require more. We just leave the state in deed restricted units. A number of our citizens fall under a certain income. We have a low home ownership rate. We have an aged housing stock, being New England, and we have blighted and leaded housing stock. And so we try to fashion programs to address those housing ills. Next slide, please. 5 minutes. Okay, I think this body saw this slide before. And basically on the left, it tells you a little bit of the activities that we engage in. On the right, it tells you who we are, myself and 7 staff members, the programs, the federal and state monies that we receive, no impact to the general fund, and some of the partners that we work with. Next slide, please. Those are a list of the programs. I believe many of you are aware of these programs, from down payment assistance to residential rehab to a fair housing initiative to a Section 8 program. We have something for everyone, and all these programs are sorely needed. Next slide, please. Okay, this is new. I know you people are people of action, and so I can talk about programs generally, or I can give you some flavor for what we've accomplished and what some of the goals are. So quickly, the first bullet, residential rehab, 312 units over a prescribed period of time. When we talk about home ownership, our down payment assistance program, we've helped 135 people call Hartford home through affordable, accessible down payment assistance. We in our division have really ratcheted up our outreach efforts. We want to meet people where they are. We don't want to sit in our offices and wait for someone to show up to a session. We're doing mailers, we're doing drive-bys, and we're really reaching people. So you can see this fiscal year, we've already reached out to 567 homeowners in an attempt to get them engaged in one of the programs that we offer at the city. We have, you may not know this, about $500,000 in state money specifically designed for improvements in the Promise Zone. I don't have to explain what the Promise Zone is, how it came about. We know some of those neighborhoods historically have suffered from all sorts of ills, from low employment to lack of housing choice to low. Yeah, so that's why we have $500,000. We expect to burn through about half of that, probably through the remainder of the fiscal year, maybe a little bit more, but very important funding there. You may all know the Hub, $1 million in home funds. I don't know if some of you made that groundbreaking transformational project, mutual housing. I would encourage you to visit that project if you get a chance. It is awesome. It is an awesome project. There's state money, federal money, a true example of what public-private partnerships can accomplish when we get together. The next slide, we have $600,000 committed to the Edward Street Home Ownership Project. That project consists of 3 two-family homes. We've closed on the financing. We hope to have a groundbreaking in the next 2 weeks. And we're going to create some home ownership on Edward Street. $900,000, if you all remember, Randy Salvatore, Dono, the first phase, we used $900,000 in home funds to ensure affordable units in that first phase of the Dono project. You know, we talk about downtown and how some people want to focus on downtown. Well, we need to focus on our neighborhoods, but we also have to make sure that folks who maybe have lesser means from an income perspective get to live downtown and get to enjoy those amenities as well. So we're doing that. In the next phase of Dono, we've committed $1.2 million to ensure affordable units in that phase as well. We continue to assist through our tax abatement process, Westbrook and Bowles, to make, when they're up and running, those projects more sustainably affordable and successful from an operations perspective. Some of you may not know, we have committed 10% of our Section 8 allocation, our vouchers, to Journey Home and our mutual effort to end homelessness. I don't think any other municipality has pledged that kind of assistance as it relates to the battle to end homelessness. That equates to about $4 million. Since inception, we have housed, yep, it's right there. We've used 251 vouchers to place homeless individuals and families, and we have about 164 vouchers to go. So we think we're making a dent and we're doing a good job. The Fair Rent Commission, since the beginning of the year, has adjudicated 20 cases. So those outcomes might be the tenant and landlord coming to an agreement. Maybe the tenant relocates and there's no longer an issue as it relates to a hike in rents, or the rent is unchanged. The commission might find that, hey, there's no cause, Mr. or Mrs. Landlord, to raise that tenant's rent. So we find that the rent is fair, or if you want an increase, it's going to be a reasonable increase, $10, $15, $20. So we're proud of that effort. This is new. The CARES Act and HUD awarded us 50 emergency Section 8 vouchers. So instead of using them how we use them traditionally, just to house people, you know, I thought, well, maybe we can do something creative. So I talked to the health department, Liani, and as you know, there are many people that are displaced for a number of different reasons in Hartford and end up in hotels, okay? Those hotels can be uncomfortable for families, particularly in the era of COVID, and it costs the general fund a lot of money. So what we did is we put together an MOU and we brought in Journey Home and we brought in my sister's place and Imagineers and the health department and the housing division. And we're actually, we're assessing families and ensuring that they're eligible for these vouchers, and we're getting them out of these hotel rooms. We're focusing on families and we're focusing on the elderly. And I don't have to tell you, when you're a family of 4 or 5 in a hotel room during COVID, when you have homework and other things, other responsibilities, that's a hard way to go. Okay, so we think it's important to maintain and support the displacement, hotel, permanent housing pipeline. Right now, we've dealt with 37 families in hotels, 26 have received vouchers, and through Journey Home's Coordinated Access Network, some families just needed a security deposit. Other families had sufficient income. Other families took advantage of other resources. So people are not just receiving vouchers if they don't need it. They have to demonstrate a need. But right now it's pretty successful, and we're moving people out of hotels, particularly those families that are larger that tend to stay in the hotel situation longer, costing the city more money because it's hard to find a 4 or 5 bedroom out there. But with these vouchers, they can now afford that higher rent associated with these larger units, and we can move them out faster and save the city some money. So yeah, that's pretty successful. We're going to expend all those vouchers by the end of the year. And then finally, the New Samaritan project, 22 units of senior housing across from Stop and Shop, that empty lot. They're applying and will be approved for HUD 202 funds. We have home funds, 650. The state is chiming in with 500,000. Right now, there's a funding gap, but we think they may be able to find the money to fill that funding gap and hopefully close this year and start construction in earnest, maybe spring of next year. So
recording stopped.
Oops. I'm sorry. Can
What
everyone
was
hear
that?
me? Great. So next slide, please.
Yes.
These are just some of the partners that we work with. They're common, household names that you're aware of. I don't see the Housing Authority there, but we work closely with the Next Group and the Housing Authority. In fact, we're negotiating with the Housing Authority now. They probably have 15, 17 buildings, scattered site buildings. And we would like, and I think they agreed, to sell those buildings to developers that will then fix those buildings if needed and sell to owner occupants. So although the Housing Authority is a rental unit outfit, because they have a scattered site portfolio,
recording in progress.
They're going to be working with us to create home ownership with those housing opportunities. Last slide. I think it's the last slide, maybe. So I didn't want to leave without asking the counselors for something. And what I'm asking for, if you can support me in any way, shape, or form that we can get it, is about $500,000 for the now unfunded GAP program. When I presented last, the GAP program is a program that incentivizes its developers to build single and two-family homes on empty lots, or rehab single or two-family or even three-family homes and bring them back to life and sell them to owner occupants. That's the key. So empty lots, not performing, no taxes, blighted property, abandoned. This program can turn those properties around. And so it checks all the boxes: the tax rolls, empty abandoned lots and properties, blight, home ownership. And what's great for me, and this is really rewarding, with this program, 90% of the developers and contractors that we deal with are local and minority contractors. So they may not get the big school projects, folks, but this is a program that provides a low barrier to entry where they can make some money and they can hire subs locally who can make some money. So as we talk about building back better, I love the Sinas and the Ninas and the Habitats. They're outfits that we all know and we all love. But I also want to go after the individual contractor and developer who lives on Blue Hills or or Street and Frog Hollow or in the South End that has this capacity, but all they need is a little funding to get them over the hump so that we can sell these properties to eligible homeowners. So that's it for me. I'm sorry I went over at 7:07. I wish I had more time to answer your questions, but I welcome anyone to reach out to me if you have any specific questions about programs or projects, HUD, the state, or city programs.
Well, Mr. Matthews, Councilwoman Chair Surgeon asked me to step in. She did go off, so I don't know if my colleagues, Councilman Gale or Council President Rosado, have any questions and/or statements.
I more have a statement through you, Chair. Mr. Matthews, thank you for that presentation. I really enjoyed it. It's very educational for us. And I am going to reach out to Councilwoman Shirley Sturgeon to see if we can have a presentation from Development Services as to kind of educate us and the public of what is affordable housing. And so I think that would be very beneficial for us and the community.
Thank you, Council President. Councilman Gale?
Just one question for Ms. Matthews. I didn't see anything in here about, there's a project going on right now. Are you part of that Bracket Knoll? What's going on with that project?
So Bracket Knoll has been a challenging project. As you may know, Terrell is a development group. the city has closed on 230,000 in funds early on for site work. So we have invested as a city 230,000 as part of the funding stack. As it stands now, because of COVID and some issues with MDC, the project is now experiencing cost overruns. Now, to its credit, the state has stepped up and is finding the money to fill that new funding gap. As you may all know, the project calls for 14 homes. At this moment, we're now looking at a phased approach. We're going to build 5 homes right away, get those homes done and sold, and then we're going to start a new phase 2 project in short order for the remaining 9 using state funding and other funding. And so all the parties have met, MDC, the state, the city of Hartford, and we've all agreed at this point to stick to this new phased approach. So Council, I can tell you one of the big holdups has been MDC. And so now we're kind of fighting through some of those issues. And so I think we're going to make some real progress on the 5 homes and get that done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. If there are any other questions, Brian, I do want to just make a couple of comments myself. With my day hat, I really want to thank you for, particularly as providers and Attorney Home as the advocacy agency, but working together in the can for those vouchers really make a difference. And really, really kudos to the city, which is hard for me to say as a council person, but with my other hat, the emphasis they put on people experiencing homelessness during the pandemic, getting them into hotels, keeping people safe, but now getting them out of hotels. So, I thank you all for seeing the importance of that and, getting that done. So that are my 2 little things that I wrote down. So I thank my colleagues. I thank the other presenters. Let's see, what else would Councilwoman Surgeon say? I don't really know how to portray myself as her. Yes, Mr. Matthews.
Well, I know what she would ask, and I hate to hold you. But as you all know, there were there were a number of news stories nationally and regionally about the condition of units in Hartford. You all remember that we got a lot of bad press. It was embarrassing, to say the least. Bad news travels fast and it gets around. So it's always, I think, a good idea when something great happens to take a bow for that. Promises kept, promises made. We said when that happened that we would work with private developers, public-private partnerships to bring some of these properties back. As you know, because you've just dealt with Omni, before Omni, Greg Jones of Atlantic Financial bought the Carr Apartments, 150 units, and we bought those units back. The city was instrumental in making sure that those apartments had HUD subsidies to help with leasing those units and with rehab. There's a groundbreaking tomorrow that you may not know. Heritage Homes. That's a Dave McCarthy. I don't know if you're aware of him. He bought a 5-property portfolio, and one of the properties happens to be Barber Gardens, 84 units that also made the news. He closed on financing. There's a groundbreaking tomorrow, and his portfolio is about 207 units. Barber Gardens now from 84 to 74 to reduce some of the density. But he has HUD financing, Section 8 financing, and other financing. Construction is going to start in a couple of weeks, and we're going to bring those units back as well. And so we are walking the walk when it comes to making sure that we're attacking dilapidated units and getting them back into code compliance for families that want to call Hartford home. So I know that's near and dear to her heart, so I want to say that.
No,
before she got me to
because we want to highlight, yes, people love bad news. If it bleeds, it reads, but we also want to make sure that the things that are being done and are being done in a way that makes sense, that benefit the residents, are brought to the forefront, because oftentimes that is not what happens. So I appreciate that. I really appreciate that. So if there's nothing else from my colleagues, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all. Have a good night, and we'll see you soon. Thanks,
Thank you, Brian. Thank you very much.
Bye,
Yes, sir.
Brian.
Take
Thank
care,
you.
councilors.
Bye. Thank you,
Have a nice
Attorney
night.
Vassallo.
You too.